Hi there, welcome to No Nonsense Whisky. My name's VinPF, and on today's episode we've got something really quite special in my personal opinion. Now this here is the Gulliver's 47 STR Cask. Now you may be forgiven for not quite kind of getting onto that because it doesn't actually say that really on the bottle. It says matured in toasted recharred casks and then a bunch of other information that we should go through in a bit. But it actually isn't kind of like called the STR Cask, but that's how you'll find it on a website. Now, one of the reasons why this is a little bit special, in my opinion, is that this is actually really new. You know, like as a time of recording, you actually can't buy this online just yet. But by the time you might see this video, I think this will probably go out tomorrow after time of recording. You might be able to get it. But what I'll do is I'll pop a link in the description below. If you come back to this, should be by the end of the week, I think. So this is really new. But we'll get into the actual whiskey itself. I just want to talk about Gulliver's 47. I've covered a few of their whiskies on the channel so far, both of which have been distilled by the Norfolk distillery, the St George's distillery in Norfolk, and they've both been brilliant. You know, the first one was a fairly young whiskey, and the second one was a 10-year-old whiskey. Both of them were really good whiskies. Now these guys are obviously independent bottlers, and at the moment anyway, they're really focusing on English whiskey, which is, as an Englishman, is something that's quite close to my heart. Really trying to push English whiskey because there's some really good stuff coming out of England at the moment. And this thing here, which you might get why I'm so excited about it, is actually a Cotswolds single cask whiskey. Now, it's a little bit strange because you'd expect a kind of independent bottler to kind of smash that all over their kind of liveries at the front, their labels. But as you can see, maybe you can't see because my camera's terrible, but it doesn't say Cotswolds on this at the front at all. In fact, you can just about see it. You won't be able to see it on that camera there, but just here where I've got my finger, the Cotswolds distillery, it just says on here that it's made at the Cotswolds distillery, and it goes into a little bit of detail about why this is a special whiskey on here. And I find that fascinating because this is really selling itself on its own merits rather than the distillery it came from. That sort of thing. I think that's really good stuff. Now, going back to what we're calling it, the STR cask. If you've been following me for any length of time, you'll know obviously I'm a big fan of the Cotswolds distillery. They're my local distillery, and thankfully they're constantly producing excellent stuff. Their Founder's Choice is something that I recommend to a lot of people because it's one of the best whiskies I've tried, and the thing's only like 3 or 4 years old, maybe 5 years old at a push. This is also a 5-year-old whiskey. I know that from the company that sent me this bottle, the actual Samuel Gullivers themselves. They've told me it's 5 years, but again, you won't find that information on here. They're not shouting out about that this is one of the oldest Cotswolds bottles that you can get. It's just part of it. Now, I was talking about the STR casks, shaved, toasted, recharred casks. And this is something the Cotswolds are really into, and it's becoming a bit of a staple for newer distilleries because they really do need to be putting out excellent whiskey at a very early age in comparison to like the big guys up in Scotland. Now, those guys up in Scotland, they get to just make so much whiskey, and they can barrel it in kind of second and third fill casks, and then they can blend that in with all the rest of the stuff and still have good stuff coming out of it. But newer distilleries, English distilleries are a good example. New distilleries, they need to be putting out quality liquid in only obviously minimum 3 years, but kind of 3, 4, 5 years old. And the idea behind the shaved, toasted, recharged cask is you get an old cask, you shave off a little bit off the inside, you toast it nice and warm, then you reflame it, and you've basically rejuvenated that cask and got yourself a brand new cask to a certain extent. And what that does, it's an expensive process for sure, but what that does is impart more cask flavour. Like this is an ex-red wine cask. I think it's American oak as well. I'm pretty sure. Let me just double check that. Yeah, American oak. And you get this colour. This is natural colour. This is what you get after 5 years. Now, some people will be sceptical because obviously you would have seen like a 12-year-old Scotch that's a lot paler than this, but that is the effect of your cask choice, for, second or third fill versus a technically brand new cask. Now, we've talked about the bottle and the whiskey a little bit. We talked about the distillery. We talked about the people that are putting this out. Let's talk about the actual liquid inside, and then we'll talk about price and see about value and things like that. So I have it already here in the glass. Let's get onto the nose. Now, the thing that struck me first about this, it's a really subtle and subdued nose. Really deserves to be left out on the side for a while. Often we talk about years in the cask versus minutes in the glass, and we talk about seconds in the mouth and stuff like that. It's a good idea, but I think this deserves more than 5 minutes out on the side. It's immediately quite cereally. This is something that I always find indicative of a fairly youthful whiskey, but it's not a bad smell in any way, shape or form. And for me, I'm getting some kind of charry and vanilla-y notes coming through as well. So this is that STR cask really coming through. And like I said, I have to say, it's a very understated nose. But as we'll see, let's get onto the palate. Oh, now for me, this is where the magic happens. Now, immediately, you're getting more of those cereal notes, more of those vanilla-y and those kind of charred vanilla notes coming through. But then, out of nowhere, kind of orangey notes are coming through, some chocolatey notes are coming through. Not the kind of things that I typically associate with an ex-red wine cask, but what does that even really mean? I think the big thing that strikes me that's odd about this is that it's the same casks as that you would find in the Founder's Choice, which is by far my favourite Cotswolds release. And it's so different from that. I mean, the ABV is a little bit lower for sure. You know, this is a single cask, but it's not cask strength. But the comparison of the two, they couldn't be more different. I think that must just be how the casks have come through. Now, the finish is quite long, actually. Longer than you'd expect it to be. And it's quite spicy. It's like a kind of clovey spice almost. The kind of juicy fruits that we were having before, they sort of mingle around, but they disappear off, and then you're left with this kind of beautiful spiciness. Now, I don't know if you kind of caught from this video, but I'm really impressed with this. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the Cotswolds, and it's quite indicative of what they're releasing, for sure. You know, it's nothing that's too wildly divisive from the Cotswolds. So I have to say, you know, if you've tried a lot of the Cotswolds range and you're not too bothered about their flavour profile, what they're kind of really going for, then, you know, this is more of the same, and you're probably not going to be that bothered by it. But something that we should talk about is the price. I haven't actually seen this on a website yet, so I can't guarantee this, but the company that are releasing this have told me the RRP is going to be about £59, which I have to say is incredibly reasonable, considering this is a single cask whiskey from one of my favourite distilleries. I'm super glad that I have a bottle of this, and I think if you're a fan of the Cotswolds and if you're interested in English whiskey, this is definitely a way to go, because you're getting something that's you're not going to get again. I don't think, you know, this particular flavour profile right now. It's the same as what the Cotswolds are producing, but also quite different, quite interesting. It's got the ABV going for it, it's got the price and the value going for it, and it's just a really tasty dram. Now, I think I've infused about that enough now, so hopefully that's made you think about going and buying that. Please do go and search for it. As I said, when I get a link for when this is actually available, I'll drop the links in the description below, so you might want to come back in a couple of days, but check out Samuel Gulliver's on Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that, and they will kind of announce when they're actually releasing this. They've been doing kind of teasers and a little competition to kind of let you know that it's coming, but really it should be day of release of this video, pretty much now, maybe tomorrow, and then this is going to be around. Thanks for watching today's video. It was made possible by these beautiful people scrolling across the screen now. If you're interested in helping support the channel, please do go and check me out on Patreon. Thank you.